going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS preview for this year's Ryder Cup. We've got ourselves the most fun week of golf that we have the entire year. It's super stoked for all the action this week. And here in this video, going to get you guys ready for all of your lineups this week. But first off, a breakdown of how Cup golf works over on the DraftKings website. We'll talk through some strategy, some of the top plays that we have on the slate, who's expected to play the most rounds, and who has the highest sportsbook lines when it comes to points scored to help you build your lineups for this week and give you a game plan for all of your exposure. So by the end, you'll have all the information that you need to have yourself a week, and we got a lot to go through here, so it's not waste any time at all. And start off with, first off, a look at Bethpage Black and how this golf course is going to play in 2025. Bethpage Black is one of the hardest golf courses that we have in the world, and one that we've seen for major championships in the past. So unlike some of the other Ryder Cup venues that we don't see as often, we have a pretty good idea of what to expect this week, and that is a long, hard golf course, firm and fast greens, and also lush, long rough is really going to test these players. So when we look at the off the tee profile, it's more distance than it is accuracy. That should favor the home side on the Americans. You have bent POA greens. That's what you want to look at if you're looking at some putting stuff. Your approach form, whether it's the last 24 or last 12 rounds, that's going to give us a good idea of who's really hitting the ball the best heading into this event. But their modeling and the stats on a week like this are not the end-all be-all. For other PGA Tour events, that's what we really focus on. We try and find what kind of skill set is really going to translate to success. This week, it's more so about volume, who's actually playing the most golf, and then, of course, pairings and correlation there. So we're not going to spend as much time when it comes to breaking down this course, but birdie or better percentage, that's really important when it comes to the 4-ball format, trying to make a lot of birdies and beat your opponent that way. You can't ignore around the green, but it is towards the bottom of my modeling, and though comp courses are typically a pretty big part of my process, you can't really comp this event to any other ones on the PGA Tour. So maybe course setup wise, it's like a US Open with that long rough. Again, they've used this for major championships in the past. Torrey Pines or Muirfield Village, some of the longer, harder golf courses that we have on the PGA Tour schedule, you could use for some of that crossover, but it's not going to be as much on this stat angle this week. It's going to be much more about correlation, trying to build lineups for a desired outcome, which is what we'll focus on here now. And before we start going player by player, giving you guys the digs and an idea of how all these guys are projecting, let's talk about this Cup format, because it is a lot different than what we have for stroke play. Rather than getting points for birdies, streaks, a bogey-free round, etc., you get points for holes won. That could be a holes won streak. If you win 3 in a row, you get a birdie streak just like you would for regular DFS. If you win a match, you get extra points for that as well. And if you beat someone so badly, let's say 8-7, where you're up 8 holes with 7 holes to go, you also get credit for the holes not played if you're a winner there. So it's a different type of format. Make sure you brush up on the scoring if you guys haven't already, but it mirrors what we have for the main slate. So what we really want to focus on here, guys, is kind of like a showdown slate for football, where we have to think about the desired outcome ahead of time, because we can play as many players as we want from these teams. If you think America is going to win by 5 to 10 points, a massive blowout, then you might want to have 4 or 5 Americans on your squad. And even if you wanted to go all 6 players from the same squad, you could pull that off here in 2025 as well. They have no rules on having to have a player from either side, kind of like what you have on the NFL showdown streets, which makes this sort of correlation even more so important than what we have for that kind of a sport. So for example, for round number 1, we're going to know who's playing together for the first time. If somebody wins the first session and then they're paired up for the entire event, you're going to want to stack those 2 players together. So for example, a Scotty Scheffler and a Russell Henley had a lot of success at the President's Cup. They started off hot, they kept them together for most of that event, and while when it comes to singles on Sunday, there's obviously not going to be any sort of a pairing there. Anyone that's playing together for more than 1 session the first 3 days, and in particular if they can go on a run kind of like JT and Jordan Spieth did the last time that they played in a Ryder Cup together, then that's how you can get to the optimal lineup that way. So rather than just picking our 6 favorite players like we typically do for a PGA DFS slate, we've got to start to think about those correlations and those pairings. So we'll talk about some of the potential pairings as we go player by player here, but not even just trying to find correlation between those two sums, but between the entire team. For example, if you think Europe is going to go out there and kick some ass this year, then you can play 4 or 5 Europe players to take advantage of that. So that's how it differs a little bit from most of the slates that we see. We also have a captain spot as well. It's worth mentioning there. It's going to cost you 1.5x to use them at that spot, but it's also going to score you 1.5 as many points. So your favorite player, the player that you have the most conviction with this week, you're going to want to use in that 1.5x spot. But let's go player by player and really dive into the nitty gritty here this week. So we got Scotty Scheffler up top at $11,400. $2,600. And we'll talk about how I did my projections this week. You can see all of them on the screen. I've got nothing blacked out here as I don't have any of my player pool quite figured out yet. I am going to be waiting for those round one pairings before I really start to build any lineups and get an idea of who I'm getting over the field on. A couple reasons for that. One, so we know who to pair them up with. The combination of price is really important. It's not just the price tag of one player that we have to break down. And then you also want to try and consider who's not playing in the first round. Those guys that aren't playing in session number one are going to have a much lower opportunity to get to the optimal lineup as compared to other players. So I want to know who's going to be out there early on a Thursday. But let's go through Scotty Scheffler and my projections. So the way that I did my projections, which I think is really the only accurate way to do it for a Ryder Cup like this, is to take the sportsbook points scored projections and to use that as the main driver for it. And Scotty Scheffler is expected to play in every single slate, all 5 starts, which isn't going to be the case for everyone that tees it up. You might get a Rory that plays every single session, maybe a John Rahm. There could be 1-2 other players that you're going to see out there for all 5 sessions, but that's why his projection is jumping through the roof. Not only is he over 123 points for a projection, but he's expected to score about 3.5 points when it comes to raw scoring. So that's how you get yourself to that sort of a score. And of course, his pairing is going to be somebody that we keep a really close eye on, because if it is a Russell Henley is significantly cheaper down the board here, only $7,600. When you buy a $7,600 Russell Henley, assuming that he's playing with a Scotty Scheffler, you're getting Scotty Scheffler along with it. You're getting that talent level to kind of raise the overall level of, a rising tide raises all boats is what they say, right? And when you're playing with Scotty Scheffler, you're going to be able to take advantage of that rising tide. So he's super expensive. Captain spot $17,000 maybe isn't the best place to do it, but whoever he's playing with, assuming that maybe it's a Russell Henley down here, he might be the one that you want to use at captain, because he costs you the same exact price of what's regular Scotty Scheffler is at that kind of a spot. And maybe Russell can win his singles match on Sunday as well. He does that. Maybe they win 3 of the matches between him and a Scotty Scheffler. That could be massive for his DraftKings scoring this week. And you can see his projection solid. He's expected to score about 2.5 points when it comes to his raw score, which has him projecting a lot better than some of his peers around them. Next up, I got a Rory McIlroy at $10,200. If you're going with a Europe-led win here, and I guess I'll just mention what I think is going to happen this week. I think it's going to be unbelievably close. I think USA is going to have the golf course set up to their advantage. They're setting up a lot of wedge shots from what I've seen from some of the analytics crew, and they've got the home field advantage. That is going to make a difference. However, Europe has the better team, and I'm somebody that breaks down the analytics, likes to look at the form heading in and all of that. They've got the deeper team, in my opinion, the more talented team, and partially it's because of some of the live guys that they have, like a Terrell Hatton and a John Rahm, that maybe aren't getting all the kind of respect that they deserve. So if you're going to go with maybe the upset being pulled off, again, that's a low percentage outcome, but it's going to happen at some point. One of these road teams is going to find a way to win over the next 2 to 3 times that we play this Ryder Cup. Rory McIlroy would be massive in that kind of scenario because he's about $1,200 cheaper than a Scotty Scheffler. He's still at a 3 raw projection on the sportsbook, so he's still expected to play quite a bit and have a lot of success. And you can see with his Ryder Cup record, he's not the best player in terms of win percentage. That would be guys like a Patrick Cantlay that are towards the top end of the board there, but he has the most experience of all these other players, which is massive, especially when you're on the road taking on that heated crowd like we have at Bethpage Black. Somebody to consider at $10,200 for sure. And his pairing is going to be one to really keep an eye on too. He's been matched up with a variety of different players over the last few years. Sometimes it's been players like Hatton, sometimes it's been some of your newer guys like your Shane Lowry's that he's played with. They try to go with the Irish connection. Whoever he's playing with is going to get a massive bump, just like we had with Scotty Scheffler, and that correlation between him and his potential pairing could really be a key when you're going out there and stacking your lineups. Next up, we got John Rahm at $9,800. He's got a really good track record in the Ryder Cup, about a 67% win rate if you exclude his pushes, and somebody that's expected to score over 2 points this week. So the Americans, they've got the better raw score projections on these sportsbooks. They, of course, are the favorites. So, for example, if you compare Bryson DeChambeau and John Rahm's projection, Bryson DeChambeau pretty much cakewalks him. You can see he's about a 0.5 point raw higher on the sports books. That's the main reason for that. But once again, if you think Europe's going to have a chance, keep it close, or potentially even win this week, guys like John Rahm are going to carry lower ownership. And I don't quite have ownership done quite yet. It's just going to take a little bit longer this week because of the captain stuff and trying to track down the community sentiment in the round one pairings. But John Rahm, if he's going to come in at half the ownership of Bryson, again, that's speculative at this point. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Jon Rahm is clearly the better play because he's still going to go out there for 4, maybe 5 sessions. Bryson DeChambeau probably out there for 4 or 5 sessions as well. But the ownership and that game theory aspect, which is massive when we're playing a site like DraftKings, is what we really have to hammer home here. Because if we're playing in a 50 to 100,000 entry contest, and we know that there's a lot of variance at an event like the Ryder Cup, you don't want to be putting all your eggs onto one basket on a player that doesn't for sure gonna get there. I mean, like, it's different with the Scotty Scheffler. We know he's playing every single time, and we know he's probably gonna win 3 or 4 of his matches. We can't really say that about Bryson. If he starts off slow, maybe gets cakewalk in his first match, he may only play like 2 or 3 matches the entire week. So give me that game theory. Give me some of the lower-owned players towards the top end of the board. And I'm thinking that Jon Rahm might be one of those. And let's go through Bryson here. You can see he actually has a losing record in the Ryder Cup. There's also been a lot of press this week about him not being the best teammate, somebody that's hard to match up as well when you're trying to find a pairing for him. That's because of the golf ball. It's because of the equipment, his play style. He really sprays it all over the place. No one has that similar play style to a Bryson DeChambeau. So if he's going to be highly owned, if he's going to be one of the chalky guys towards the top end of the board here, there's a really good chance that I'm not going to be using him as much. So maybe a match the field or an under the field sort of play for me, in particular because I think Europe has a chance to pull the upset this week. Next up, we got Tommy Fleetwood at $8,800, one of the best Ryder Cup records that we have in the entire field, and playing some of the best golf of anyone in the field as well. You can see he's at number 6 ranking for all the different modeling categories that I run, one of the best Ryder Cup records, and on the sportsbooks, I actually thought this was a bit surprising. They only have him at about a 2.25 projection. I would have had him at 2.5 to 2.75. So if that keeps the ownership lower, if he's going to be maybe an averagely owned play here in this 8K range, then I'm going to be well over the field on a Tommy Ladd, because kind of like a Jon Rahm, a Rory McIlroy, he's one of their studs that they have on Europe. And something that we've noticed from Europe over the last few Ryder Cups is that they've been stud heavy, that they've played their best players for 4, 5 sessions almost every single time. A lot of their guys that just hardly make the team, that are there for depth purposes, like, I hate to pick on a Højgaard or, a Shane Lowry towards the bottom, or a Sepp Straka, like, they're still super quality players. They'd still be solid on the American side. In fact, that's why I think that Europe has the better team, because they would be about mid-tier guys on the American side if I was building my teams. Tommy Ladd, though, is going to be out there for 4 or 5 sessions, and he's only $8,800. So unlike some of these guys that are 10K plus, you are getting a slight price discount when you're going to a player like Tommy, which also makes him more affordable at the captain spot. So again, ownership's really going to drive a lot of my exposure this week. That's why I don't have my player pool completely filled out yet. But assuming the ownership isn't going to be too crazy on Tommy, I'll be over the field there. And next up, we got Xander Schauffele. He's got a 4-4 record in the Ryder Cup, only projected to score 1.75 points though. So this is the one projection where the sportsbooks really don't have that much confidence in him. They're not expecting him to play maybe nearly as much as what he had in the past. And him and Cantlay are always players that are sometimes paired together. They've kind of been known for that over the last few Ryder Cups and President's Cups. If they do that, there could be some correlation between the two. And considering that they're only in the $8,000 range apiece, and in the past, guys like Xander and Patrick Cantlay have been like 10K golfers when we've gone to the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup, because they have absolutely killed it when they're together. If we see them paired up for session number 1, I'm going to be using a metric fuck ton of them, because Xander is still a top 5 player in the world. I know he had the down year after the injury, but that's going to happen, right? I mean, he had some time away from golf. He was never going to be the same self when he first came back. Now he's had some more time to get his boots under him, and he started to look a lot better towards the middle to the end half of the season. They've got Patrick Cantlay too. He has not had many wins this year. He hasn't been that sexy, flashy player like maybe we've had in the past, but he's been gaining a ton of strokes to the field. He's got one of the best Ryder Cup records of anyone that we've got out here. And if you use one of these two at captain, it's going to cost you a little bit under $13,000. The other player you mix in for about $8,000. That's a $20,000 stud duo that you can pair up that could potentially play together the entire week. So the correlation's massive on those two, and I think the price tag is solid as well. And if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go to a Patrick Cantlay, just because he's a little bit cheaper and has the better form. But don't sleep on Xander Schauffele as a potential low-owned stud play at this year's Ryder Cup. Next up, we got Ludwig Aubert at $8,400. He's got a 2.5 point projection. So the sportsbooks seem to think that he's going to play almost every session, if not all of them. And I know that he was the talk of the town the last time that we played early this year. It was, is he going to make the Ryder Cup team? Is he going to get that first win? He obviously broke through, had multiple wins over the last year, but over the last couple months, he hasn't done anything. I mean, he fell off. He was mostly finishing at best, maybe around 10th in some of these events towards the end of the year. If he's going to go overlooked with this kind of a projection on the sports books, then I'm going to love him too. But we'll have to see what the ownership looks like. I don't think I'm going to be the only one that's looking at those sportsbook lines and trying to figure out who they're expecting to play the most golf. But if the form and him not being the best, you can see number 16 in my total modern ranking, if that's going to keep him about averagely owned, then I'm going to like him as well on top of players like a Tommy Fleetwood, a Xander, and a Patrick Cantlay. And I do have to say that, like, of the entire board, I think the best value that you can get for your buck are these 4 players. They're guys that are expected to play a lot. They're very cheap. You can easily mix them in as mid to higher tier players. And if you use them at the captain position, it lets you spend up at 4 of your 5 other spots as well. Next up, I got a Viktor Hovland, who on the sports books is not getting as much love as a Ludwig Gobert. He's at a 1.75 point projection, which is still solid, but a little bit lower than guys like a JT or a Henley. And part of this is the home field advantage. They're expected to win, so the Americans have that higher point projection. But guys like JT and Henley are going to be significantly higher owned. So you can see a JT is at a 2.25 projection. A Russell Henley is at a 2.5 point projection, which is a lot higher than a Viktor Hovland here. So once again, these Europe players are going to be overlooked in general because of the money line favoring the US and some of these sports books and the projections in general favoring the Americans. But Viktor Hovland's been okay in the Ryder Cup before. He's 3-4-3. Really paired up well with Ludwig Gobert the last time around. So maybe they put the 2 Scandinavians together. They go with that combination that seemed to work out well last time. And if so, it's not just the fact that Hovland's one of the better players in this field. You have Gobert that's rising the tide as well. So another example of a potential pairing that I'll be over the field on. But guys like JT, Russell Henley, good as one-off options. And I have no idea who they're going to pair Justin Thomas up with, but he'll probably play at least 3 or 4 sessions. Russell Henley has a better chance to play 4 or even all 5 sessions. So that's why his projection's a little bit better than a JT. But yeah, we'll have to see what the pairings look like on those 2 players. The Russell Henley one's probably the one that is most likely to be with a Scottie Scheffler. But if Justin Thomas is paired up with, it's hard to even say, like, maybe a Bryson, like, I don't know. There's not really a really easy pairing to have for Justin Thomas there. If he has an elite tier pairing at $7,800, he'll have the best projection on the entire slate because he'll be playing even more sessions if he's paired up with one of the best players out there. He's already really good in the Ryder Cup to begin with, a 7-4-2 record. Somebody I'll be keeping my eye on for sure, but I am expecting him to maybe be the most popular player that we have on the slate. Terrell Hatton's also a really good projection when it comes to the price tag, and I'm actually going to go ahead and lump in Cameron Young here as well. They both got 2.25 point projections, and they're only $7,000, $7,400, $7,200 respectively. Terrell Hatton, of course, has much more experience in this Ryder Cup format, but Cam Young has started to look a lot better over the last 6 months, and he's a little bit of that hometown hero as well. He went to school in the Bronx. He is from New York, from Sleepy Hollow, which is, I believe, like 30 minutes away from this golf course. The kind of player that's going to have a lot on the line. He's going to have all that crowd behind him, and the raw projection's solid. So this range in general is probably going to be super highly owned. Same thing with the 8K range. I'd say everyone from Tommy Fleetwood down to Cam Young is going to be extremely chalky. This is probably where a lot of the ownership's going to go this week. The lower tier range, these guys that aren't expected to play a whole lot, there's a lot of wild cards down here that if they got paired with somebody that's really good or they get off to a hot start, might end up playing 3, 4, or maybe even 5 sessions. I wouldn't expect it with any of these guys down low, but there's at least a chance or an opportunity if they got off to that hot start, if that was going to be the case. But the ownership is super low, and you can see why. Their projections are a lot lower. Guys in this range are at like 1.25 projections, like a Sam Burns, a Matt Fitzpatrick, a Colin Morikawa without a whole lot of form, or even a Robert McIntyre, who's not one of those elite tier Europe players that we're expecting to play almost every single session. These are the kind of players that I'm using for correlation purposes. If any of them make the first session and they're paired up with a good player, that would be a really good spot to save some salary and try and get some differentiation. But outside of that, these are players I'm not going to be using in like 30 to 40% of my lineups, maybe like 15 to 20% as a sprinkle, because they could still get there. There's, especially in the large field GPPs, there's only 24 players to choose from this week, so you can almost play every single player in the pool and still get leverage on guys in your 150 max exposure. But these aren't players that I'm going to feel great about jamming into my lineup. So I guess I'll point out a few that kind of stand out. Ben Griffin's been playing really well. He's got the highest point projection down low, him along with a Colin Morikawa. But with Ben Griffin, Griffin having the better form between these two players. He's the one that I would personally prefer to go to if I was going to one of those two. Also, number 7 when it comes to the recent form ranking. I guess the Matt Fitzpatrick as well. He's got some of the best form of anyone towards the bottom of the board. Now, his raw projections like 1.25 on the sportsbook, so they're not expecting him to play every session. But given his form and given his experience in this format, only 1-7 though in Ryder Cups. Jeez Louise. One of the worst, if not the worst record that we're going to have in the field. Somebody I'm at least considering because of how well he played to end the year. Next up, we got a Shane Lowry, somebody that could be paired up with a Rory McIlroy, so that would be massive for him. Guys like a JJ Spawn or a Justin Rose here, I'm not expecting to get a whole bunch of playing time, but they could conceivably get out there with one of the better players for a session or two. And yeah, same thing with guys like a Harris English, a Sepp, and Erasmus. They are pure flyer plays, guys that you're using in 10, maybe 15% of your lineups on a week like this. It's more so focusing on that mid-tier to maybe that 8K range where you're finding a lot of the value and using those bottom-tier players to get some differentiation in your lineups. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the Ryder Cup preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also, go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning and their margin of victory for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page. So on there's where you got all the projections that you just saw. My player poll will be updated as we get closer to lock, as well as ownership projections to help you make all of those game theory decisions, and all the bets on underdog and prize picks that I'm mixing in as well. All of that can be yours for free if you guys guess that winner and the correct winning score margin. So for example, say USA maybe by 3.5 points. If you get that exactly correct, you win a free month access, no questions asked. It'll be on a first come first serve basis, so guess your team and that margin of victory before anyone else can steal them from you. Best of luck with that giveaway, with any of the exposure that you guys are going with, and go Team USA. It's going to be a fun week. It'll be ruined on the red, white, and blue, as I'm sure you guys can imagine. We've got the Ryder Cup shirt on. I was thinking about going up this weekend. I still might make a last-second trip. I'll trip up there for Saturdays or Sundays matches. If not, I'm going to be rooting them on from home, just like I was there in person, and hopefully can cash out on some GFS lineups in the process too.